My name is Sam Thorpe. I'm the Director of Product at Nitro. And we have recently, and it's my pleasure to share this with you, but we've recently put together a survey on the state of document productivity within organizations. And this presentation is really organized around sharing that with you today. There's a lot of people in the audience that are dealing with high security, high compliance environments. This survey went out a little bit more broadly, but the results I think you'll find interesting. So what do we hope to cover today? I want to give you some insights into what we found, as well as the impact of those findings, as well as practical ideas that you can apply in your own organizations for increasing your own productivity. And some of that even relates to not just cost reduction, but actual ROI, to things that you can implement, strategies you can implement. And I think really the first place to start is at the employee level and the employee experience. If you've worked in an office, you've undoubtedly heard and probably verbalized yourself things like, I can't find the document, it was in my email, I can't seem to find it, can you resend it? Or I couldn't open it, or I don't have that software package, or I can't find the login to that system, on and on and on. And the result is a tremendous amount of consternation. It's a wonder with all of these different applications and tools that we don't, it sort of begs the question is why as an organization don't we generally feel more productive? And so that was an interesting question for us to look at. And I think the answer is that because in many ways we're not. While we have come a long way since the typewriter and since the Pony Express, the realization is that a lot of these tools that have enabled us to do incredible things have added a certain level of complexity. And while many of the workers in our organizations aren't necessarily as sophisticated as the folks in this room, the complexity trickles down to a level where there is productivity loss. And what we're seeing from research that's done here by Harris Interactive is that there's a massive percentage of employees that complain that they're facing daily document-related challenges. And oftentimes document processes are the means to an end. And the end is really what we view as truly moving the needle. So we don't often reflect on the process that we are trying to hurry through and the opportunities for optimization and the loss that actually, real financial loss that occurred, especially as it happens at scale in our organizations. Common productivity killers, they really come down to not so much the tools as they come down to people. They may not have the right tools. IT managers might view them as too expensive. They're not using them appropriately, or as a human, as a pleasure craving, habit-driven creature, we do what's habitual and the path of least resistance. But as we look at that, there are real true costs with the lack of productivity in the document area. So IDC did a report that it's somewhat shocking that for an individual information worker, they're losing almost 25% of weekly productivity around document challenges. Now, not every worker in an organization can be classified as an information worker, but when you look upstream to the organization as a whole, then it's estimated to be around 10% of productivity is lost dealing with document challenges. Now, that's a problem, but it also represents a pretty significant opportunity. So that was the basis and really the inspiration for us putting this survey together. We wanted to know, what are workers doing? Why is this occurring? And what opportunities might there be for us to improve the situation? So I want to share with you some of the findings from the productivity survey that we put together. First of all, this was done in partnership with the PDF Association. We had 1,200 respondents, about 22 questions across 54 countries, organizations of all size, and not limited to any specific vertical or function. So it really gave a general leveled view of the way that people are using documents across a variety of organizations. And here are some of the highlights and insights. So first of all, what are you doing? Oh, question.
You don't happen to have a breakdown of those 1,200 recipients? I mean, I know you said that there are people from 1 to 10,000 plus. You don't actually have the distribution of that against the number of respondents.
I don't have that as part of this presentation, but we will actually be publishing this as a white paper, so it will be available to everyone. I'm only going to touch on a few highlights, so that's a good question. I'm only going to touch on a few highlights today.
How to relate the numbers you're about to show to corporate size.
Right. In some cases, we'll draw out those inferences. In other cases, it's not covered. Well, it may not be as viewed as material for this particular visual. But what are people doing? And clearly with PDFs being a container for content, the envelope analogy is a tremendous one. Reading, you would expect to be at the top of the list. I don't know if I guess you can read these if you squint a little bit. But I think what we were surprised is to see printing as the second most, especially amid the rallying cry of going paperless. And paperless certainly has social benefits and the concept of going green, but it's really not limited to that. Once a document moves into the physical plane, then it's fraught with frictional processes, cost of administration, executing, moving it through time and space. There are significant costs associated with that. So we want to understand, looking at this data, well, really, what is the scale of this? So we asked the follow-up question, well, how many times per day do you scan, copy, or print? All of these things deal with physical paper. And overwhelmingly, 1/3 of respondents said that they deal with physical paper more than 10 times a day. So that sort of brings us to our first insight. Many businesses are not nearly as paperless as they could be. Now, in many cases, it's required for certain security and compliance, but many businesses, it comes back to habit again. And the result is an increase in cost. Certainly administration, filing is not free. And then slower, this is really where it hits, is slower revenue recognition. Obviously we talk about, speed to revenue, but also delayed service delivery. And the speed of delivering services is key in business today. So from there, then we wanted to look at, okay, well, where is this frustration coming from? So interestingly, at a PDF conference, and there's lots of representations from PDF editors, the top frustration by a large margin is in the editing realm. And there's a couple of reasons for this. So in large and small organizations in varying degrees, not everyone is deployed a PDF editor, not provisioned a PDF editor. And there's also and part of that reason is perceived cost by IT organizations. But the other issue is that for the layman information worker, they don't always understand the difference between reader technology and between a PDF editor. And sometimes they run up against constraints on their ability to execute a task. From editing, then the next group is really all very similar. All various forms of interactivity and collaboration were all viewed as equally challenging. So that was interesting. So insight number 2 is too many employees still feel like they lack the tools. Whether they absolutely do or they feel they do is in a sense immaterial, but they certainly lack the understanding to get the job done, which impacts collaboration and creates a leakage of productivity. From there, there's another dark place that documents reside, and that's our email. And so most respondents say that they're receiving a tremendous amount of documents attached to email every day. And that's tricky for a couple of reasons. One, it's not necessarily the most secure way to transmit documents, but we all have varying degrees of success with email-related file systems. So it really starts to impact us as our email stacks up, the ability to know where documents are at in terms of workflow, or ensure that we're doing what we set out to do, or we're operating as most efficiently as we can, both as the receiver of a workflow and as the person triggering it. So that's insight number 3, is email attachments continue to be the primary way that employees are transmitting documents today. It lacks security, and also when you think of the concept of team traceability, when we're working as part of a broader organization and more than a single person has a vested interest in the status of that document, then obviously that is challenged by this particular workflow. Next, where are the majority of your work documents stored? So this should terrify IT managers somewhat, but overwhelmingly 80% are storing it on their personal computers, some filing cabinets, and interestingly, for smaller businesses, in the breakout here, they're adopting cloud storage slightly quicker than larger businesses. But the insight here and the impact is pretty clear. So most network sharing isn't as bad, but most employees are storing their documents. They're either leaving them in email, or they're storing it on their personal computer. Employees come and go. Obviously, the challenge there is that it's very difficult to understand and fully benefit from the institutional knowledge that exists in employees' individual file system. So that's one of the challenges that we're dealing with today. And then again, back to kind of what kind of scale are some of these problems operating at? How many times per day are you using PDF documents? Almost half of the respondents use PDF documents over 10 or more times a day. So there's real scale here, and I think the last insight that we have to offer here, just at the highest level, is optimizing document processes offer tremendous ROI that has been unearthed, not yet unearthed. And oftentimes this isn't the sexiest problem to solve, but back to 10% of your organizational productivity may be lost. There's a number of ways that we can look at attacking it. We'll talk about some practical examples. Just a couple of highlights, again, in summary. Not most businesses aren't as paperless as they could be. Employees don't feel like they have the knowledge or the tools. Whether it's one or the other, again, is not entirely material. Same result. Employees send documents through email, which makes collaboration less efficient. Many employees store documents on their personal computers, and there's tremendous potential. And we've talked about, as we looked at some of these insights, some of the impact of that: high friction processes, security issues, lack of visibility, alerts and notifications, and overall frustration and waste. So as I mentioned, maybe we'll touch on some practical ideas for improving document productivity. And first of all, this is simple, but get the right tools for the job. So we're, in terms of PDF editors, there are a number of options available, and certainly employees should be able to create, combine, convert, collaborate, sign, and attach or connect to DMS systems. But almost more importantly than that is making sure from a business standpoint that you've got the right tools for your business. Do you have a partner that provides you as much of a solution as you need? The deployment mechanisms, whether you're in a Citrix environment or you want to deploy via AppV or similar mechanism, do they offer affordable pricing so you can take these tool sets wall to wall if that's your desire? And then have superior support and service. And sometimes this is a tag-on. It's sort of an afterthought. But if you look at all the frustration and the way organizations need to be equipped to support their users, there are a number of organizations that will provide that direct 24/7 always-on support to the end users in the organization. Number two is remove physical bottlenecks. This is a big one, and I'll touch on this for a couple of reasons. But the ability to connect desktop and cloud processes. While there is the ability to author documents in the cloud, it's still the preferred way to do it on the desktop. But and then move it into the cloud to begin collaborating. The benefits of the cloud are, in a sense, extending some of the old world benefits of the desktop, certainly in the realm of collaboration and workflow and governance, but the ability to track changes, detect that things happen, viewed, signings happen, comments, and have all of those things attached at the document level. So it's a really interesting concept to have a document and be able to look at the institutional knowledge and the intention behind it, the collaboration that went into it, and ultimately the document, and have that traceability. Also, e-signatures are a big one. So deliver value faster with e-signatures. So if you're not familiar with the e-signature space, I want to share a couple of twists on the ideas, because e-signature solutions are not so much about about signatures anymore. It's almost more about workflow and governance and connectivity within your line of business. And customers now want them. So for a while there was trepidation around the legitimacy of e-signatures, which has changed in the legal landscape a little bit, but customers now feel the benefits, and that's creating some pull for companies to adopt e-signatures. Also, there's some push now, because potential customers of e-signature solutions are realizing there's real customer experience benefits for their customers. They become, in a sense, easier to do business with, and services can be provisioned more quickly. And mobile devices increase turnaround times dramatically. And so there's really, how compelling is it? Well, according to Ombud research, an 80% reduction in turnaround times. That's massive, in addition to removing physical bottlenecks. And so that creates real ROI. So back to, not just cost reductions, but there's ROI here. So an average of $20 savings per document according to their research, and those savings become exponential when applied across functions in the organization. So if you can apply it to HR, if you can apply it to sales, then that ROI is exponential. And back to the improved user experience, they're finding 5 times increase in customer loyalty, because again, you in effect become easier to do business with. But there's, again, more to that. It's not just speed to revenue, but it's speed to service delivery, core product value, core service value, and that's really key. Quick Salesforce case study. Salesforce wasn't always using e-signatures. In the past, it took them on average 2 days from contract origination to provision services. After e-signatures, the majority of services, 60% of services are provisioned within 15 minutes, 90% within 1 day. an average savings of $19.35 per document, and upwards of $50 in some cases. And so again, that's tremendously compelling. United Healthcare, is who Nitro uses for insurance provider, moved 800,000 documents last year. So again, you do your back of the napkin, figure out what ROI means to you, but it's tremendously beneficial. So again, just really briefly, 4 ways to increase document productivity. I just showed you 3. The 4th is really, remember, you need to educate and incentivize and model what we refer to at Nitro as smart document behaviors. You need to change old behaviors within any rollout of any system, whether it's CRM, enterprise contact management. Behavior change is at the root of adoption. You got to show them the benefits and incentivize them to adopt. But if you need another reason, look at the global workforce trends. There's some tectonic changes in the way that we work. Telecommuting, distributed workforce is increasing. 21% increase is projected over the next couple of years, and a transient workforce. So having employees, just the relationship of our employees, now more freelancers. So functions like creative, copywriting, engineering, creative design, UX, flowing on when you need them, rolling off, not carrying them as fixed costs is a new way of doing business. Mobile, clearly. Not only are people using personal devices, but mobile also means that there's a lot of business done after hours, at all hours, which helps e-signature workflows, signature requests be completed, and overall connectedness. And so when you look at all of these shifts in the global landscape, it sort of reinforces that cloud-based sharing, signing, and collaboration is going to become a critical utility for our businesses, both internally, externally, and across the global landscape over the next few years. So that is the final presentation for this track today. I so much appreciate your time and staying awake. And a question.
Thank you for the presentation. That's very interesting. The question I'd ask is that this market is oversaturated now with solutions, and you had quite a few of them up there. It seems to me that it's really a cultural change within organizations to bring the solutions in, isn't it? Especially older or more established corporations aren't so into these new, Dropbox sort of facilities. It's really what I think it's waiting for the younger generations to come up who are more comfortable with a lot of the trendy solutions that are going on at the moment. What's your opinion on? Do you think it's a cultural change? Because it's definitely like the market is flooded.
I do think it's a cultural change. The sea change has happened, but will we respond to it? That's the question. And in a way, I think it's an opportunity for a new role in an organization to shepherd those processes. So typically and now I'm putting on my vendor hat, when you sell into an organization like this, you find your champion. It's an enterprise solution sell, but you definitely have to find that champion and educate them and arm them to help take this tool set and deliver the efficiencies through the organization. A lot of cases, there's some interesting use cases where an e-signature vendor will provide you with a poster that has like check boxes next to all the use cases that you can employ, which in a sense provides the psychological challenge to see how many of these you can implement. The benefit for the vendor being the more that you implement, the more that you're tied together in partnership. But it's really part and parcel to the question that you asked. You've got to have someone champion it. An organization isn't going to tacitly adopt it on their own. But the benefits are massive, so the ROI, the executive team should be able to get behind it. But a lot of those ROI benefits for you, I don't know if you've looked into that space much, but those hopefully felt new. They're shocking and dramatic. And a lot of times, if you can deploy upon a simple use case within the environment first into a proof of concept, that's generally how these things start, then you can start to create that culture shift within the organization because the ROI is just so clear.
My office is paperless, but I've come from corporate pharmaceutical, and they're just not going to be paperless for a long time.
Yeah.
They're not going to. These are very modern day solutions for them. They're not going to really address.
That's good. I appreciate your question. You have a question in the back?
The white paper that's coming out, when you delve more into the actual ROI that you saw, so the $19.35, how you came up with that, is that going to be discussed?
Yeah, that's a follow-on it's a follow-on paper we need to work on. So that figure came from a Salesforce interview that was conducted by Ombud Research, so that they generated that together. I don't have the background necessarily on how that was constructed. I think it ends up being highly individual to your organization. You have to look at your process, the individuals that touch that process, your costs related to it, your cost of time as they have to do follow-ups, the risk that is generated by contracts outstanding, and you sort of have to make your own assessment of that. It is incumbent on the vendors to help you walk you through that process, and I think we've got some things teed up.
Just caution you in putting that out, because people are going to ask if they want to use this to justify their own budget requests and things like that. You may want to have some sort of disclaimer.
Just point well taken. Yeah, appreciate that.